Hey friends, and welcome to a new episode of BIMvoice. Today we have the pleasure to talk with Clifton Harness, who is the CEO and co-founder at TestFit. Hello Clifton,
Hi.
how are you doing?
Very nice to connect this fine morning with you guys.
So nice to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our chat. Let's start this. Can you please introduce yourself with your own words?
Yeah, hi. My name is Clifton Harness, co-founder, CEO at TestFit Incorporated. We're a seed stage startup based out of Dallas, Texas, United States. We make it easier for architects, real estate developers, general contractors, brokers, lots of different stakeholders to solve feasibility studies for buildings. Um, and we probably have democratized generative design more than any other company on the planet, to my knowledge.
Exciting, exciting. I'm really looking forward to this. Can you please share your screen and start your presentation?
Sure, yeah. Let's see here. So I wanted to focus a little bit on why we do feasibility, um, as opposed to like the technology itself. I think we kind of get lost in the romanticism of building really great technology, and sometimes we forget why we're here. So yeah, there is a full screen window presentation. There we go. So AEC is dependent upon real estate. Real estate is where the rubber meets the road in terms of finance and getting money into our industry. And we believe that processes in real estate are broken. So I'm going to go through just one cycle of kind of how a site moves around between different groups. And in the top left-hand corner, I've got a touches counter to the number of people touching it, as well as a opportunity cost estimate. So if I'm a land seller and I've got a site, I'm going to hire a broker, and that broker then goes on my behalf um, to real estate developers, and they say, "Hey, what can you pay for this site?" So that starts off a flurry of activity within the developer. They've got to look at the market. They've got to understand how they can lease or sell the building, and they've got to figure out how to structure the deal or finance it. And on top of that, they don't have a site plan. They don't really have a product in hand, so they've got to hire an architect. The architect has to make a design to fit that site. Uh, so up to this point, it's all an idea. Someone's got to make it real. So we've got to connect with the construction industry to get pricing. And the GCs, they're getting way more intelligent in my mind. Even in the last 5 years, it's been incredible. But they've got pre-construction teams that dive into this site and the design to create pricing. And so you need pricing to understand how expensive the building is so that you can get your financing done. So it's a whole deal, right? There's all the parts need to be there. And oftentimes the pre-con guys, they have to reach out to subcontractors to get pricing. Um, the pre-construction market is pretty opaque in terms of pricing. So everybody's kind of firing from the hip. Um, and then that whole package gets sent back to the developer. They run a pro forma analysis on it. Oh, and then it takes this whole package back up to the investors and to the bank for the limited partner money or the debt equity. In some other countries outside the U.S., this might include government entities that actually support the construction of buildings. But most buildings in the U.S. are built without government financing. So that's my context, being an American. So top left-hand corner, we've had 9 touches, 9 different companies. Our opportunity cost for this one deal is at $30,000. This is kind of the hidden fees and expenses of building a business in AEC.
And
Uh,
what about the time? we don't have any idea how long it takes to do to go through all these processes, right? Back and forth.
Yeah, so at your first kind of round the trip takes anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And by the time you're getting the bank's input, you're probably at least at 3 weeks. Some firms are really on top of this kind of thing. Like they might be getting information from their investors in real time, but other times it's a little bit more choppy. Um, but oftentimes, like once you hit this point, there's going to be feedback on the deal from the money, like the guys that are putting in 90% of the investment. Um, and so they'll say, hey, we need to figure out how to get, maybe a little bit more units, or we don't really like the design of this thing. And so they send it back to the developer and they say, okay, pro forma needs to improve a little bit. What are the levers that I have? And your biggest lever is actually the building design. The building design has everything to do with cost. It's the product itself. So we're now on cycle number 2, architect, pre-con, back to developer, pro forma, and back up to the investors in the bank. The second cycle takes a little bit less time, maybe a couple weeks, but we're at 14 touches with 50K in opportunity cost. And so on any given deal, all of these different people kind of put their hands on it to give a good idea of whether or not it's going to work, or civil engineers might provide advice on how to move dirt around. The city municipalities, they'll weigh in on some sites, especially if it's in a tax, special tax district in the U.S. And so what we're trying to do is kind of sit at the center of this by trying to solve these problems. But we do it in a way that's different from, any kind of web-based tool. Like we just provide a software package for an architect to use, or that a general contract could use, or that a real estate developer could use. They're all at different phases of the project lifecycle. It would be great to get them all on the same platform, but they all speak very different languages. And then another concept that where we've landed is called real-time deal prototyping. And so this is when you get actually all of these different elements into the same room, and you have somebody running the configurator. TestFit is a configurator. It is, you plug in an input and it gives you a very specific output. Tesla has a really cool car configurator on their website. You can pick the make, model, number of autonomous features that you want in it. I mean, it's made the shopping experience for a car at least enjoyable if you have, $50,000. Not very many people have that, but hey, why don't we have configurators for buildings that cost north of $40 million? I don't, right now we're drawing this stuff on trace paper, like it's chicken scratch. So this has been, I think this is a deck from, 2017. Our mission is gone relatively unchanged. And I can slide into a product demo to give the visuals to what I'm talking about.
Of course.
So we fire up our app.
So let me ask you something. Is this a cloud app, or it's something standalone? You can install it on your computer in Windows or Mac?
Yeah, so TestFit's a desktop application. We have a Mac build, we have a Linux build, and then we have a Windows build. So we build, on all 3 of those. We have spent a little bit of time working on a new initiative called WebAssembly, which is essentially to bring the power of the desktop to the web. And we did a little bit in our office beta last year on WebAssembly, and it was incredible. I think that's probably the future of the web. A lot of people focusing on cloud compute, edge compute. Those are useful for some things, but they're not good for generating buildings, in my opinion.
I understand.
But again, my perspective is different from everybody else. I mean, we built TestFit from the ground up as a generative design tool, and nobody else, at least to my knowledge, has done that for the desktop.
Okay, now because maybe not everybody watching this knows or listening to this knows what generative design is. Can you please explain in very friendly terms what
Very
generative
friendly
design is?
terms.
Yeah, at least
Okay.
try.
All right. So let's say you're a kid going into a candy store, and mom and dad give you $1, $1 to spend. There's 100 cents in a dollar. And you go in the candy store and you've got, options that are 25 cents and 33 or 35 cents. And you've got a 15 cents, so there's lots of different ways that you can cut your dollar up. But if I'm a kid, I want to end up with 100% of that dollar spent when I leave that candy store. So your goal is, I want to get all of my money spent. And your constraint is that you have to do it in increments of what the candy is being sold for. And so maybe you go through lots of iterations as a kid. Maybe you're not so good at math. Maybe you have to stand in front of the cashier to ask for, advice on how you should do this. In my opinion, every building design problem is basically like a kid, a real estate developer going into a candy store with only $1 to spend, but they're trying to get $10 worth of value out of it. And understandably so. I mean, buildings are the most expensive things that humankind endeavors to build. So, we need to thoughtfully consider how these are designed and constructed. The true essence of generative design is goals versus constraints. Your goal is to spend the whole dollar. Your constraint is, I don't want to end up with 5 cents at the end of the day. I want it all spent. So TestFit is a generated design tool. It is a constraint environment for generating a design. It is not, in the academic sense, generative. The academic sense of generative is that it emerges out of nowhere from software that is somehow more intelligent than a human. So we don't do that. TestFit is very logically built with procedural algorithms that take into account a lot of things. Like, we design these algorithms ourselves. We don't train a neural net to solve the building in a black box. And it's much easier to control geometry this way. And what we know about buildings is that it is 100% about the geometry. So yeah, I'd love to dive into like a generated design demo.
Yeah, let me just say that it was very interesting, your analogy or your example with the candy store. It was very interesting. Did you use this before, or it was something that just popped out into your mind right now?
That one was a fire from the hip, but I think I like it. I could probably use it
It was
again.
really cool. I
Maybe I'll
really like it.
simplify it a little bit, I mean, it's already simplified, but I could simplify it even more by making it a better analogy. But I think a lot of people are just they've seen a lot of marketing about generative design, but haven't seen anything that actually is useful. So, I don't see the utility in continuing to call ourselves a generative design tool if the perception of the industry is that it's useless.
Yeah, that sounds very, very right.
Yeah. Okay, so constraint environment. So I'll go ahead and I'll go into, I don't know, where are you? Are you in Oslo?
Yes,
We'll
without
go to
fear.
Oslo, Norway, Norwat.
Yeah, Norway. Yeah.
Um, and so we've got a maps integration here. So you can do a building anywhere on the planet, which was very important for us to get a maps provider that could do that. And then you can go to the roads panel. We've got a little bit of a road solver. So I'll go to New Urbanist. We'll draw a street maybe. And forgive me if I'm drawing over, I don't know, some really wonderful part of your city. One time I did a road like right through the Tate in London, and someone got offended. So um,
It's fine.
do an avenue. So we're kind of drawing some roads here. This looks like a train track, so maybe we'll use an alleyway for a train track, um, and then we'll do some parkways. So I'm just sort of creating a story here for a grid. I'm imposing a grid on top of your lovely, very old city. So please
Yeah,
forgive my American ways.
no problem. You don't need to apologize. It's fine.
And it's also in Imperial. I'll go ahead and flip it into metric. So I figure most of the listeners
Yeah,
are
yeah.
probably
It
yeah.
would be easier for me at least to understand. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've got 1.3 hectares here, 1.2 hectares. And so what TestFit's doing is it's just taking a boundary, and it's recognizing that okay, maybe the user wants to put a building inside this boundary. So I'll go to the configurator, and I'm just going to click on this site right here, and it will generate a building. Um, it's not a good building. Let me be fair. It's not a good building yet. It is a building. And so our goal is to generate a building given the user's constraints. Well, the user hasn't really plugged in any constraints yet for the building. So we just throw in what's called a wrap style building. It was the first algorithm that we developed in maybe 2017. So if I'm in Norway, I'm not building this giant parking garage, most likely
In that place.
style of building,
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll change it to a podium fill. And what that does is it drops in a parking structure underneath a building. And so if I look at it in 3D, that's kind of what it looks like.
Nice. It looks very nice actually.
Yeah, well, it's generated, so it's needs a little bit more love, right? Like there's more things that we can do to make it a better building.
Of course.
And namely, I've got this lovely view out to the water here. And this building's got this giant wall of mass facing the water. So what can I do to make that a better view for the people in these buildings? Well, I can go into our manual editing mode, and then all I have to do is just remove these pieces, and then I can go back out of the manual mode, look at it in 3D, and now I've really opened up that edge of the building to the views here. So that is to say, like we generated a solution, but you can reach into the solution rather easily and then edit it. Another thing that's interesting to note, at least in Norway, your city is so far to the north compared to say Dallas, Texas. So actually enabling a shadows tool to kind of see how bad the sunlighting is going to be over the course of a year. Like these inside corners of the building are
Yeah.
not they're not going to get any sunlight. So that'll be a design problem for someone to handle, down the road. And one other thing that I should say is this is IBC compliant building design. So that means the United States will use International Building Code. We don't use the same sort of building types that you would use in Norway. So in Norway, it's a lot of point block towers. It's essentially a single core that has about 4 or 5 units around the core. And then you have that's like one building, and then they replicate it a ton of times. And so, there's another company out there in Norway doing that style of building. And you guys can take a look at that, their style of generative design, if you would like to have a direct impact on your business today, if you will. But the manual tools, like what I would do is maybe I would make this a single load. So that way I don't have a unit that's not getting any sunlight. I go single here. And then I can back out of manual mode, and then you can see I don't have any units that are continuously in shade in this inner pocket anymore. So yeah, just a little bit of an explanation on IBC buildings versus Europe buildings. They're very different. The nature is very different. Yeah. And also in the U.S., we build a insane amount of parking. I mean, this building right here has a parking garage that has 570 parking stalls in it. I mean, you probably don't need that.
Most probably, yes. Yes, here they used to have in the underground one parking place for each apartment, like the newer ones.
Sure. So the way I can model that is maybe I'll just go one level below grade on the parking garage, 0 above grade. And then now we're at 308 stalls with a 1.7 ratio, which is a little bit closer. I also could improve my density on this site a little bit. Maybe I make these guys a little bit longer. Maybe there's a piece of building just sort of sitting here in the middle that's a little bit bigger. And then, I've improved my parking ratio a little bit just by adding density back into the building.
Yeah. So what is the final result you get here? What can you use this documentation for? Is just visual, or can you do something more with it?
Yeah. So, I've got another another deck here to kind of explain that piece. Let's see here. F11. Maybe I didn't open it. Decks. So what I call this is deal information modeling. So there's a lot of people that are, they really like BIM. So what's another acronym? So it's not about getting TestFit information into another editing or authoring tool just quite yet, right? We're developers, or the mindset of we are a real estate developer, or we're an architect, or we are prospecting to get a new deal so that we can make more money from this deal, right? So 5 components to a real estate deal. You've got the land. So we defined the land in the video near that train station. We've got the building, so we generated the building. You've got the construction, so you've got to go get construction pricing. We didn't do that in our demo, so that's another thing that TestFit is going to be doing. The capital, so what does the deal structure look like? What does pro forma look like? And then zoning, the regulations. So we didn't check the zoning in that last in the demo, right? Like we probably violated a lot of zoning laws, especially in Norway, because we built an IBC compliant building, but not a Norwegian compliant building. So each one of these requires their own analysis, and when you package it all together, I call it a deal information model. And so developers, which are the guys that are typically quarterbacking the whole process, they're sort of like the conductor. They're orchestrating it. They'll look at 100 deals before selecting one to turn into a project. Like their hit rate is very low. They're looking at a lot of different pieces of land. And our goal with our solution is just to make it possible for them to get to 2x.
Double.
So if they're looking at twice as many deals, they'll be twice as successful in closing them. And so, the output of this is not so much that we are going to go right into schematic design to craft a building that, needs to get built. It's more a function of we design a lot of buildings in this industry that don't get built.
That's very interesting, because I know very little about exactly this part. I'm a civil engineer, and I mostly work on project that has been already approved, and I work on the design part, right? So
Mhm.
that's why it was very interesting from the start, from the get go. I'm not very well known with all those aspects, so it's very very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of mind opening, I think, for some people. I mean, understanding the capital structure, like all of the different moving parts in the deal. Like if you think to yourself, okay, the civil engineering, I've got to figure out the grading, I've got to move dirt here, I've got to really plan for how this building can survive, the elements from a water standpoint, or geotechnical standpoint. So you're doing a lot of analysis. Well, what we have to understand in AEC is that the development guys, they're doing the same amount of analysis. It's just a very different kind of analysis.
Hmm.
It's financial. It's draw schedules. It's how do we take a $40 million loan over the course of 36 months, break it up into meaningful chunks that we can then pay the contractor, subcontractor, to get the building built. And there's an insane amount of planning that goes into that. And another thing is the legal documentation. Like if you're doing a mixed use deal that might have retail, it might have an office building, it might have multifamily. You're going to spend more on the legal structure than you do on the architecture, because lawyers are very expensive. Um, so there's a lot of moving pieces that people don't really see until you're working in a development shop.
Yeah.
So architects coming out of school, I always encourage them, hey, go work in development. You'll see how the decision, or you'll see why the decisions are made. Um, and the why of it is really important to understand your client. Uh, so yeah, I was fortunate to find a job out of school in development that had me getting deals done. And it came down to those five things, right? Land, zoning, construction, capital, and design, um, every single time. And we were using trace paper and Excel, to track all this stuff, and it was a disaster from a speed standpoint. I mean, it took us 2 weeks to do an iteration, right? Like that's unacceptable in a algorithmically, uh, there's an algorithm age arriving, and if we don't innovate, we're going to be stuck in a world where we're not using data driven design.
Yeah, and I don't think we will be stuck. We will be replaced by other people that will do it, or or some other tools, right?
Yeah, possibly. One thing that I can say, after having built this configurator for the last several years, there are different levels of people that can utilize technology. Um, if you get your head into the game, and if you are, uh, it's kind of it's more of an English thing, but if you're if you're really on it, if you're really into it, right, you can sit on top of this configurator as a human designer, and it's a bit like wearing an exoskeleton. Like you're so much more effective at wielding your brain power, because you can get it out on paper, or on a screen, at a rate that's 1,000, 10,000 times faster uh, of the last technology. Which, I mean, even SketchUp, or Revit planing, or whatever you're using, just looks like an antique compared to this.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with that. And that is valid not only for this kind of tools, for everything. Like, if you don't use tools to optimize your workflows and to optimize your productivity, you are just living in the past, and you are losing every day the opportunity to achieve more. And this is the case for this as well. Like this is like this is the era we live in, and we need to take advantage of these tools. Otherwise, like we become replaceable very easily. And on the other side, you just answered me before this when you went with and you told me about the history behind how you started in development, and what was the challenges. I was thinking to ask you, what made you to how did you came up with the idea to start this startup and to make this tool. So I
That's a
guess
great question.
the pain that you had right there, it was more
Mhm.
than enough.
Well, actually, it wasn't the frustration of the time. Before I started TestFit, I was a draftsman basically, and I didn't really know uh, why we were doing what we were doing. Right, I was told do this, and I had a little bit of an idea because worked in development. You're kind of talking about deals, right? But uh, it turns out we got to look at hundreds of sites in order to get any kind of great set of deals put together. Um, and so when I was doing this professionally, the thing that really hit it for me was I drew a parking facility, big parking garage, and it's maybe 11 o'clock at night. I just had a 12-hour day. I'm ready to go home. I want to be home asleep. I'm newly married. Like, why am I drawing this parking garage? So I get it drawn, and the thing with parking garages is like you have to then count how many parking stalls are in that thing. So there's ways to speed it up in AutoCAD. So you like sort of select all the same, and you can get a count. But that's unreliable because people will often just copy stuff on top of each other, and so like you have another problem.
Yeah, yeah, and not
Um,
very easy to do after 12 hours.
yeah, yeah. Also, humans are really bad at counting things.
I know.
uh,
I can double that down because I used to do sometimes to count the reinforcement bars, and it was
uh,
a mess. It was a mess.
that does not. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I would have lost my mind. But I was sitting there. I had a piece of paper out. I'm doing tallies, and I'm counting things, and I get the whole stack, the whole thing done, and I put it on my boss's desk. And I go home and um, come back the next morning, and he redlined the thing the first thing he got in the morning, and you know he said, "Hey, we got different counts on the parking stalls." And so I'm like, roll my eyes. I'm like, yeah, great. And, this is why I'm an idiot. But that's when it kind of hit me, is like my boss, who was 60 years old, in the industry for 25 years, if not longer, maybe 40 years, from the time they're in school.
Yeah.
Brilliant architect, but he's still counting parking spaces, for 30 years. So I just sort of looked at that and I was like, okay, I don't want my chief function of my life to be I am the guy that counts parking spaces. Um, so that was kind of when I was like, someone needs to do something. Um, but it's a gestation process, like several months later, I was in a meeting where my CEO said, okay, can we pull this into Google Earth so that we can see it? And we were, you know, 50 people in the conference room looking at a deal or something, like it's like the most expensive meeting ever, because there's like you're spending 10 grand like just in people's time. uh Executives, analysts, everybody's there. And so we get the model up and running, and someone in the back of the room comments like, what if we just made the garage slightly smaller or something, and like it was a static building, it was like a KMZ file in Google Earth, and I'm like, this thing doesn't let you do that. Like, also, if we wanted to make the garage slightly larger, like the rest of the building would need to get smaller. And so like it's a cascading effect when you basically when you manipulate any of these things. So that was another impetus. I'm like, all right, someone's got to figure out a way that we can make this $10,000 meeting, a little bit more fluid by having better technology. And this is in the early days of like GoToMeeting. Like people used to use GoToMeeting, and like our company was like, oh, we're only going to get one GoToMeeting license. And I'm like, we have offices, you know, like in Atlanta and, you know, like San Diego and Nashville, and, you know, we have all these disparate offices, and we're only using one GoToMeeting license. So like people would be like mad at each other for using the GoToMeeting link when they like were trying to have a call with somebody. And so we had this other problem that was like, it was a disrespect of the value that technology can bring to the process. I mean, a GoToMeeting subscription is like $30 a month or something. And the value that it brings to a big corporation was, you know, every time there was a call was like, you know, maybe 10 grand or something.
Jesus Christ.
Because you're in real time communicating like we are right now. So if you want my opinion on the biggest impact of COVID is that people are actually respecting video conferencing.
Online meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's disrupting email really. I mean, you used to email someone, but now you just hop on a Zoom and you can screen share, and it's incredibly fast.
Yeah, yeah, I concur to that. Oh my God, you made me pain, a lot of pain. It was it was hilarious everything you just said, and yeah, it's still like the basic stuff that are still way too many in our industry and challenges, right? So um, yeah, this is like you said, like somebody needs to do this, and you choose to do that yourself. Like I was thinking the same when I started this podcast. There must be a podcast out there where I can listen to these professionals in the AC industry being interviewed by other people, and uh, I can learn from their experiences. And I look for, and I look for, and I look for, and I find some of them that are very focused on some specific tools and repeating the same topics. And no, I think I have no choice. I must go over everything I'm scared about. I'm not
Mhm.
native English speaker. I have many fears I had, and yeah, I just need to start it and see how it goes. Jesus, but yeah, like yeah,
Yeah,
it's good.
the sharing of information is incredibly important, and especially as we're going into really two things. When I went to Europe last year, I'm sorry, in 2019, late 2019, before the pandemic. I went to London, I went to Paris, went to Berlin, I went to Copenhagen, I went to Malmö. Of course, Copenhagen and Malmö are basically they're different in different countries, but they're basically the same place. And the thing that really hit me was what the architects and developers and what they were talking about is a circular economy, which is, you know, much more sustainable
Yeah,
mentality as approach, you know, we approach economy. And this is y'all, you all are maybe 10, 15 years ahead of the United States in thinking about that. But if you really want to achieve a circular economy, you have to be incredibly efficient with scarce resources. Um, and the second problem is that housing, you know, everybody brings up the big graph about urbanization, right? Like, oh, like we're now a more urban than rural planet. You know, how do we house these billions of people within cities moving forward? And so there's a need, at least in this startup CEO's mind, for having technology that can take scarcity and provide housing from it. And so, you know, we built a constraint environment where small parameters can affect the yield on cost and efficiency of a building just with a single click. So I can hop back in actually, and I can demonstrate what I'm talking about.
yeah, sure.
Um, so let's say you've got a building like this. Our efficiency is 88.8%. That's pretty good. Why is it so efficient? How did we get there? I'm sure my corridors are not when it transitions from metric to
Imperial.
imperial. Yeah, like our corridors get all screwed up. So I gotta get back here and see
Yeah,
what's a corridor width? Not 1 meter.
no,
How about two? Okay, so let's say you have a 2 meter corridor width. the efficiency of our building is 83.2%. And that means that only 16.8% of our building is not rentable area. It means that the majority of our building is units, like where people can actually live.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is figure out how to squeeze the building in a way that's keeps it a great building, but you use less materials to build it. So what we do is we can say, okay, we have a slightly narrower corridor, okay, we're getting a little bit more efficient, a little bit more efficient, a little bit more efficient, until a point where 1.6 meters, is that really a good corridor width? Like, it seems a little bit too tight, so maybe you go back. And so you just want to be able to model these things in real time. Now, we were, back in my development days, we were looking at a deal that had, it was 500,000 square feet. There was a building efficiency problem, and our architect had drawn every single corridor at 8 foot. And the reason why he drew every single corridor at 8 foot is that's how the fire doors, they come in these packs that are 8 feet. And so he wanted to just use the fire door pack instead of reconfiguring units to make. So the way that the detail would be is that you would slightly widen the corridor where you need the fire door pack in just a small area. But he didn't want to do that, because then now he's got to redraw a bunch of units. He's got to redo a bunch of construction documentation. So we directed him to shrink the corridor from 8 foot to 6 foot. It took about 3 weeks for him to make that change, and then by the time that he had made that change, we had lost the deal. So like another party had executed and issued a letter of intent to buy the land. So we lost the deal because we couldn't model fast enough a solution that would actually work. And I think that has impacts on a circular economy. And I said early on I had 2 points. I kind of had a point A and point half A, but my second point is really the globalization of our world means that we can have these conversations. Like, we can get on a podcast in Norway and we can discuss design technology. And I can take the ideas of circular economy back to the United States and say, hey, maybe there's a more sustainable way that we can build that also fits the capitalistic ethos of our country. The way that you achieve sustainability in the United States is not going to be from the government down. That won't work here. We are too anti-government, especially in states like Texas, Florida, these big southern states that have a lot of people and a lot of economy and a lot of power. The way that you win on sustainability is you have a better argument. And the best way to look at that is see what Elon Musk has done. Like, he has taken the electric car market and actually made something of it. I mean, it was kind of a joke until he came along, and he did it using capitalism.
Yeah. Head down to Elon. I'm really looking forward to his next adventures.
Whatever it is, drilling holes through the center of the planet. I mean, I don't know, like, whatever he wants to do, I think people will just pile on because he's the golden child.
Or Bitcoin or other ones. He jumped on this as well, and made a billion.
I'm not so convinced by cryptocurrency. I think someone did an analysis of the electricity usage of it, and if it became the worldwide economy of currency, you would require the entire electrical output of the United States to run just Bitcoin. So someone's got to maybe improve GPUs or something. I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah. But we are like the technology we have. And the interest for this kind of technology, I think we will get there in a few years. I don't have any doubt about it. What can you tell me about the other co-founders? How many co-founders are you for TestFit?
Yeah, I've got one co-founder. His name is Ryan Grieg. He's my CTO. He was one of my groomsmen. He was my roommate in college at UT. We lived in a house with 10. There's 10 people, 10 guys. We had 6 bedrooms. And so if you do the math, 2 people end up in their own bedroom. So him and I, we had our own bedroom, and uh, we one day we're kind of like, well, hey, what if we kind of pool our resources? We have like a sleeping room, and then we have a study room, and so like we, it's just you're in college, so you do goofy things like that. So that's really where our relationship started and grew, was we were roommates. And then when I got into the professional world, I'd call him after work and I'd be like, man, software could solve a lot of these problems. Um, and he ended up getting laid off in 2016 from a mobile games studio. And he called me and said, hey, I really like all these problems that you're kind of throwing my way. While I'm looking for another job, can I start to solve them? And I was like, yeah, sounds like I'll get some free work out of this. It's great.
So was he a coder, a programmer?
Yeah, he's a software engineer.
Oh, yeah, okay, okay.
He was like the valedictorian of his high school, like 4.0 GPA in college, just absolutely astoundingly intelligent. I'm not. I'm like, you know, fun, sail, let's go innovate, the sort of, what they say in uh, A students go back and teach. B students are really good, kind of productive members of society, and then like C students are the ones that are entrepreneurs because they don't know what to do.
Come on.
So I wasn't really a C student, but I think I fell into that category of I wasn't so good at school, but I really loved the business world. So we matched up pretty good. And he just never found a job. He just started building this thing.
That's so nice to hear. That's
Yeah.
amazing. How big is your team now?
So we at the end of last year, we were 3 people: Ryan, myself, and another programmer. And then we hired Caroline full time at the beginning of the year. We raised a $2 million seed round at the very beginning of 2020 with Parkway Venture Capital, who have been excellent partners so far. And we hired, Caroline's my chief of staff. We hired Matt Kendall as customer success. We hired 2 more programmers, Ben and Ian. They both work on, anything. We have all these things that we're building in R&D.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 engineers now, and then we've got, I think 7 other people, maybe 8 other people. So we're about 12 right now. So we're going through growing pains. I mean, we've quadrupled our head count in less than a year. But we've also like grown exponentially on the revenue side of things. So it's going well, especially during a pandemic. I can't complain for our business.
I'm glad to hear that. And actually, the pandemic might have helped that because, like, we need to be more effective. It's more difficult to sit in the same rooms, meeting rooms, and go through things. And a tool like this, with a screen share, works like a charm.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, we're a decentralized company, and we were from the very beginning. Ryan was in Austin, I was in Dallas. Uh, we would get on Google Meet to discuss things. We a lot of our early R&D was done on Steam Chat, like while we were playing games with each other. Like we would just talk on Steam Chat, like with our
That's
ideas.
crazy.
We don't have enough time these days to really get into games anymore, but yeah. So it starts with learning how to communicate. Like my advice for early founders is you need a co-founder that has a skill set that's completely opposite of yours, which Ryan does. And then the second piece to success is communication. You've got to learn how to communicate with one another. And that's our value. Well, early on, I think that was our value. Now our IP is pretty incredible, but our value was being able to communicate what we needed back and forth with each other.
Yeah. Communication is very important in all the aspects of our lives and across the supply chain in the AEC, right? Like if you don't have communication, like we will keep being stuck if you don't talk between each other, and if you don't share more. Like this is a problem in AEC. We don't. We are very protective with the data. People don't really want to work together, and yeah, that's a big challenge that we're starting to see some progress here in Norway, but it's a big challenge. And yeah, communication is the only way you can get things done in companies, in partnerships, in families as well. Without communication, you don't do anything. Like it's nothing. You cannot achieve anything.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, even now as we're like I'm managing more people. That's the core issue is communication.
Mm.
Can you say in one sentence what used to take you 30 minutes to say, right? And so that's how you pick up efficiency, at least in my mind, in a company is being very clear.
Do you use any tool, any project management tool that helps you with staying on top of your tasks?
Yeah, we use Trello. We still are under we're in the free plan still. And we've got a Trello board that goes all the way back to 2017, early 2017, that you can go in and you can see the things that we were concerned with back then are kind of laughable now, like, oh, these lines aren't actually lines. Like there's no line drawn here. So you got to figure out how to draw lines on the GUI.
Yeah,
Colors. Hey, can we get colors? We don't have colors yet.
yeah,
Uh, like being able to type in numbers into the GUI. That was
mm,
something we didn't have when we launched TestFit. You couldn't actually type anything in. Like it was just a button. So you click a button and it raised and lowered the numbers. Like
yeah.
that was incredibly rage inducing for our customers who were like, well, I'm trying to go from 40 feet to 30 feet and I've got to click 10 times to get there.
Yeah.
Um, no. It was even worse because it used to increment on the inch. It wouldn't increment on the foot. So they'd like hold the button down and wait 30 minutes to get,
Oh
to
yeah,
move the
yeah.
needle. So yeah, we burned some bridges in the early days because our UI, UX, GUI, everything was just so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's the growing pains, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. To summarize this, what is the uh, what is the kind of who can use to the best extent your tool? Who you recommend or you recommend to try it?
Uh, Everyone. I mean, we're not watering down the tool. We've found that real estate developers who can use Excel really, really excellently can use TestFit very well. But we haven't dumbed it down so much that architects can't really get to the next level of detail. That's something that worries me when I see other generative design companies that they've basically dumbed the building down so much that it's like a box and it's just like generating like boxes. And you're like, well, it's not really architecture. Architecture is the meaningful creation of space, and it's hard to find meaning in just throwing crap at the wall to see what you get. So we've got a sort of simple modeling tool, more complicated modeling tool, and that's for really anybody that wants to try it. But really, what it comes down to in the early days of technology adoption is early adopters. Like, I don't care what industry you come from, as long as you're an early adopter and ready, willing, and able to try something new. So we get that demographic from all over the place. I mean, we've got GCs that use TestFit, general contractors that are using it, and they're doing it for pre-con. So you know, the sky's the limit. Lots of people, like in that early graph, lots of people are concerned with feasibility.
Yeah, yeah, sure. How easy it is to onboard with the tool? Do you have a free trial, or how can somebody try it?
Yeah, so it's not difficult to get started. I think the whole system's automated. If you're willing to put a credit card in is the thing. So we learned early on that we wanted to qualify people by asking them to put a credit card in, and then that's like your first step in the funnel. If they're willing to put a credit card in, that means that this is a problem that they think that we can help them solve. So you get, I think, a 7-day trial just from putting a credit card in, and then if you actually go through our onboarding process, which is fill out a form to get a one-on-one demo, and then we kind of talk about what are your business needs, and what's the use case here, and typically that leads to a 30-day free trial. And pricing is very reasonable. We don't price per site. We don't price in a way that takes the cost out of the discussion for architects. So the average sales price is about $500 a month per user, $500 US per month per user, and which is about $6,000 per year. And that means you're getting unlimited sites, unlimited utility out of it. We do have competition out there that charges per site an insane amount of money that just is untenable when you're going to the United States. Like you're going to get laughed out of the room. So especially that we're the incumbent in the U.S. So you got to beat us on price, and you're not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. How can people contact you if they have any questions?
Twitter. I'm all over Twitter. I'm all over LinkedIn. Social media is excellent in terms of building bridges across the pond. Also email. You can email Clifton@testfit.io. I used to be really good at responding to emails, but now I get 300 a day. So you're like great. Yeah, so we're pretty accessible. There's a chat bubble on our website. You can go in and ask questions. It's wired up to our Slack, so everybody in the customer success team, which is about 4 people, is going to get notified. We do operate in the US hours, so if you're in Europe, reach out to us in the evening. If you're in Asia, I don't know, reach out to us in the early morning. And that that's a great way to connect.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Clifton, for taking the time and joining me. It was a blast. I learned a
Thank
lot
you.
from this.
Yeah, I had a good time. Good questions, and hopefully we had a good dialogue.
I learned a lot, like I said, because this was a very limited area that I knew things about. So yeah, I'm really grateful for this.
Awesome.
Good
Yeah.
luck. Good luck with TestFit to get it where you hope to get it.
The future's bright. It's gonna be great. Every day we get better and better. So that's the goal.
I have no doubt because it delivers real value, and it's just a matter of time until more people realize that and try to use it.
Absolutely. Yeah.